start rather than being impolite and keep you waiting. So my name's Michael Moore, and this is my partner Tim McGonigal, and we started Folsom PT 40 years ago. Oh, wow. Starting, the celebration was last month, but anyway, we're very happy to have you here. And we're talking about safe exercise. Also with us is staff therapist Kelly and Bridget, who have been working here. And so when we get to some of the lab part, all of us will be helping so that you all have some one-on-one attention with the way it looks right now. We thought it was going to be 1 to 8, but it looks like it's going to be 1 to 1. How many people here remember the movie Dances with Wolves with Kevin Costner? No? Yes? Yes? You missed it? Oh my gosh. Anyway, the movie opens with a Civil War scene in which Kevin Costner has been wounded. And as a history major, that was my first degree, was US history. And I remember when studying the Civil War, the tremendous number of casualties that existed compared to other wars, because the rifle had been invented that had spiraling in the barrel of the rifle, as opposed to a round ball coming out of a musket like in the Revolutionary War. And when a round ball came out of a musket, it was not accurate. It would be like a knuckleball that a pitcher would throw, and it would be all over the place. So accuracy was not very good. But with rifling in the barrels, the bullet spiraled and it went straight. So when people aim, they usually hit. So there is a lot more casualties in the Civil War. In Gettysburg, 7,000 people died instantly in 3 days of battle. 34,000 got wounded. And what they didn't tally is all the wounded that got infected, as was depicted in the Dancing with the Wolves movie when Kevin Costner was about to get his leg amputated, because that was the only therapy they knew for a bullet wound to the leg or the arm, cut it off. And it showed the knives, because the knives had gone through the pants, and the pants may have been drugged through the dirt. So there is dirt on the knife, blood from the previous patient. It was a very gory scene, but you could see where infection would be terrible. It gets better. It gets better. It gets better. So then World War I comes along. The Spanish-American War hardly counted because it was only 4 months long. But World War I came along, and then what had happened in the meanwhile is that the nursing profession especially saw that if they had a more cleanly atmosphere in the surgical theater, that people didn't get infection and die like they did with the Civil War. They had all these people die because of infection. And that was the birthplace after World War I of the American physical therapy, because all these people survived wounds, but they came back maimed. I was recently in Washington, D.C., where our national headquarters are, and they had a pictorial history. So this information I'm giving you is rather fresh in my mind. And it showed the early corrective therapists, they were called. And they usually were recruited from the nursing profession. And they were strong women, because the nursing profession was dominated by women. And they were strong because they had to move people that had spinal cord injuries from gunshot wounds to the neck or back. Or they had gunshot wounds to the head and they were a brain trauma. And then they had all the ones that were amputees. And so these corrective therapists then saw that with what they had with the patient, they had to get them strong. And how do you get somebody strong? But through exercise. And so our beginnings as a profession started with exercise. And then if you fast forward you'll see a picture above the exit sign. And there is a woman in the picture who's a physical therapist named Margaret Knott, K-N-O-T-T. She was my mentor in neurologic rehabilitation when I got out of PT school in 1975. And she was recruited by the Kaiser Company, Henry Kaiser Sr., to exercise people in their rehabilitation center. Now remember, Kaiser didn't start as Kaiser Permanente Medical. Kaiser started with construction and building ships in Oakland. And lots of injuries could occur with such an industrious type of heavy labor. They had lots of injuries, and he wanted to take care of the workers with a special team at a rehabilitation center he created. So this whole exercise then was carried out in the place that she established at Kaiser Vallejo, and it was world-renowned. And what I mean by world-renowned, it was world-renowned in the PT world, physical therapy world, as being a center to learn how to exercise patients way beyond what was taught in physical therapy school. And in that light, I got to be under that type of lineage, and this place has always had a very, very strong exercise component. It was so strong that barely had we started in 1983 that we started exercising patients in groups early on so that the group could benefit from the physical therapist knowing each one's dysfunction, but trying to push each one as a group, and then the group pushed each other. The very first group we had is a young man from Egypt, a school teacher from Sacramento, a high school injured athlete, and a 64-year-old nun from Sisters of Mercy, an administrator. So we had a knee injury, we had a back injury, we had a leg injury, and these people all exercised together as a group. And they cheered each other on. They thought I was the bad guy, and they were all in it together. So we had a lot of fun together. And we discovered with the community of exercising that the robustness, the exertion, everything stepped up compared to just exercising one-on-one. So as I said before, exercise has always been a very huge component of how we practice physical therapy at this particular center. Okay? And then my partner Tim now is going to take over and lead you on to some other concepts that we have to deliver. I'm glad you were patient enough to get from Dances with the Wolves to the present.
Yeah, right. Starting out a little bleak. Yeah. So I'll start out with a question. Why would you exercise? Why would you exercise? When you think that living creatures are driven to conserve energy, to seek rest, then why would you fight that natural impulse? And, when you think about when you exercise, then your body gives you signals that you are under stress. Your heart rate increases. Your breathing becomes heavier. You start to create heat. You sweat. Your muscles burn, saying, are you sure this is a good idea? So why on earth would you exercise instead of just seek rest? Well, we know that if you rest and nothing is challenged, then everything weakens. And without movement, your body fluids don't get pushed around, and there's stasis, and then things thicken and turn into mud. And we know that if you don't have any stimulus, then even your nervous system says, well, there's nothing to learn. I might as well start reabsorbing myself. So without stress, there is decay. But we know that if the stress exceeds the tolerance and the remodeling capacity of the tissues and systems, then they'll be over-challenged and they'll break down. So there is a balance of rest and challenges needed in order to have exercise and rest be productive. It's the yin and the yang, the middle way, Goldilocks and the three bears, and finding the not too hot, not too cold. It's got to be this balance. So if we think about exercise, then we believe exercise could be the most powerful medicine on the planet, because it influences every tissue and every system of your being. So we think about it, you exercise and your bones get challenged and you fight off osteoporosis. And you think about you exercise and your muscles get challenged and you keep muscle mass that we lose so rapidly as we age. And the cardiovascular demand keeps it so that you can carry blood and food products to the cells so that they can be healthier and they'll take away the waste products. And we know that when you move, then the ground substance between the fibers of your connective tissue turns over faster and better and slipperier so that you don't lose your mobility. And we know that if you load and unload your joints, then the discs and the articular cartilage get fed. So if you don't have those things, everything decays. If you think about even your nervous system, they have found that exercise is about as effective as medications for depression and anxiety. When you exercise, then there's a part of your brain called the happiness center that gets happy. You cannot exercise and sustain a bad mood. I've tried, it is impossible. If you are ticked off about something, and you go out for a walk and you say, I'm going to enjoy being ticked. I'm going to enjoy being ticked. You just can't do it because the happiness center gets stimulated. The pain science people in our profession think that when you have pain that lingers or escalates after the natural healing process has taken place, it is because of changes in your nervous system where your body sense has become disrupted in the area that you had the pain. And so when normal, healthy stimulus, touch, pressure, stretch, comes from that part of the body up to this part of the brain that has been altered, the brain says, I don't know quite what to make of it, I better make pain out of it. So when you exercise and you feel the movement, if you bathe in the experience, then it clears up your body sense and it decreases people's pain. If you think about exercise, when you feel like you have strength and stamina, it helps your confidence. It helps you have courage. It helps you develop a healthy relationship with adversity and discomfort, because you don't see them as the enemy, you see them as challenges that if they're within the tolerances of your tissues and remodeling capacity of your tissues, that will make you stronger. So when you think about exercise, it is good in every category as long as it is done in a way that is within the tolerance of your tissues and your systems. So when you think about that, there are some general guidelines. We have the guideline of your cardiovascular output. We've all heard that rule. You take 220 minus your age, and you should keep your heart rate below about 80% of that. So if you're 10 years old, that would be about 170 beats per minute. If you're 40 years old, that's about 145 beats per minute. If you're 60 years old, it's about 130 beats per minute. If you're 80, it's about 110 beats per minute. So they have these general guidelines. If you have health issues, then you need to talk to your medical provider and say, do you think it's safe for me to go with that general guideline, or do I need to be more conservative because of the cards that I'm holding? In athletic training, then they have found that if they only increase the demand of the exercise 10% a week, it will be within the remodeling capacity of these young athletes. So when you think about the mistake that we all make when we exercise, we get this idea we're going to get in shape, and we start out too fast and we progress too quickly, and then something breaks down. So when you think about the timeline of that, if you start to exercise, you put a demand on your cardiovascular system, on your tendons, on your muscles, on your joint surfaces, on your bones, on your mental function. And at first they all get challenged and they weaken a little bit because of the challenge. And the whole idea is to create enough of a challenge that you challenge their integrity, but you need to give them enough remodeling time that then you end up with a net gain in the end. So what we have seen is that people usually start out with an exercise program and they go great guns for about 2 weeks. At the end of the 2 weeks, it's not so exciting and so new anymore. And the soreness starts to set in. And they tell us, it's pretty universal, I am tired all the time. I fall asleep watching TV. I have trouble getting out of bed in the morning. I have to go to bed earlier because all the remodeling that is occurring in all those tissues and systems is normal, healthy, understandable. And we found that between week 2 and week 6, we call it the valley of death, because people get in there and the fatigue is happening and it's not so exciting anymore, and they stop. And if you stop for a couple weeks, then you will lose all that demand that was causing the remodeling to occur, and you have to start over. You don't get to preserve it. So our job is often to pull people through the valley of death. Don't stop, please don't stop, just show up, just show up. You can do less, but you can't stop. And then if you get to the 6 to 8 week mark, then all the remodeling is caught up and people start saying, oh, okay, now I can really start feeling the benefit. But you have to understand that game of challenging your tissues and your systems, knowing that there will be a breakdown, and if you sustain it, and if it's within your tissues tolerance and remodeling capacity, then you'll end up with a net gain. But that net gain is often not noticed until week 8 or week 12. So there's a long buy-in because of a physiologic change that you're trying to produce. And that is why people need support. Unless you are such a strong person mentally, then people need support from a family member, from a neighbor, from someone they met at the gym, from a personal trainer, from a physical therapist. Somebody will say, get your shoes on, let's go, instead of letting you be. Because when you exercise, as I talked about, you are creating voluntary adversity, and the conversation will go, adversity or the couch? Adversity or the couch? Adversity or the couch? And eventually the voice of the couch will win unless you have somebody say, come on, just come, just get started. And we all have had the experience that we really don't want to muster the energy to do it, but once you get started, you think, I'm glad I did. But that mental thing of getting going, I've said to my wife and my friends, if you guys didn't show up, I would have gone home. I wouldn't have stayed to exercise. And it's the darn truth, even though I know how good it is for me. So if you think about the benefit of exercise, that long run of kind of getting on solid ground. Oh, the other thing that happens really often, even if you have a young athlete and you increase the challenge of their exercise too quickly, or if you have someone who is not exercising, they're just getting started, between week 3 and week 4, people start getting a tendonitis. Shoulders, knees, elbows are common. Or they get a cold. And you think that you have so many tissues that are trying to remodel to become healthier, and they're all competing for your resources. They all break down, including your immune system. And we think that your cardiovascular system and your muscles and the coordination of your nervous system all remodel faster than your dense connective tissues. And so pretty soon you can go hard enough and long enough, and the dense tissue says, well, you didn't give me time to remodel. You're over-challenging me. I'm going to get itis. So oftentimes we need to hold people back in those first 6 weeks, because they're chomping at the bit, and we're saying just keep showing up, just be consistent, lay the foundation so it is a smooth run instead of going too fast, getting an itis, getting a cold, because if you stop, you lose it quickly, you don't get to store it. Okay? If you think about choosing your starting point, then you might have to experiment the first day and say, how much can I challenge my tissue before I feel the cardiovascular fatigue coming on, or the muscle burn coming on, or the fatigue in my bad hip, in my bad knee. And so then you want to say, okay, can I get a gauge, and then can I do about 2/3 of that when I'm starting? So you're not hitting the limit, but you're choosing something that should be well within your capacity. And should you do it every day, or should you do it one day and take a day off, allowing the remodeling? Do it a day, take a day off. So if you think about walking is a nice example. We tell people they're pretty deconditioned, or they're coming off of a lower extremity injury or back injury. Then go out in front of your house and walk up and down in front of your house. Look at your watch, walk up and down, and as soon as your back starts to send you a signal that it's been too much, look at your watch, 7 minutes. So next time you go out, you can go out for 4.5 minutes. So you walk out for 2:15, you walk back for 2:15, you stop. So it's within your tolerance so that you can sustain it day after day. And a good mantra is to do less more often. So there's recovery time instead of getting it all in at once and over-challenging your tissues. It is normal that you could get sore. That's a normal, healthy response. But once people have had an injury, they associate soreness with something bad. And it may be, and it may not be. Sometimes you get the message it was way too much. Your ankle swells way too much. Pain really came on strong. It was too much. I got the message. I'm going to correct. I'm going to start out slower. But oftentimes, if you don't know, if we were all 16 years old and we went for a hike in the mountains, then you're enjoying the hike. Oh yeah, a little burn. You get in the car. By the time you get home, you think, oh man, it's hard to get out of the car. Next morning, you can't get off the toilet. And you laugh about that because it doesn't come with fear. It comes with, oh yeah, we did too much. But the way that you'll know if the trend is your friend or not is over about a 2-week period. And you want to ask yourself, how much am I doing? How sore am I getting, and how quickly I'm recovering? And if within 2 weeks you can do more, the soreness is the same, and you're recovering quicker, you'll say the trend is my friend. But if in 2 weeks you can do less, pain is worse, longer to recover, you say, I'm over-challenging my tissues and my systems, I need to recalibrate, I need to back off. But you won't know until time passes, because you have to see if your remodeling capacity is going to outpace. If we think about exercise, it's such a broad field, you think, oh my gosh, we could talk about a million things. Talk about flexibility, talk about strength, talk about cardiovascular fitness, talk about relaxation, stress control. But when it comes down to trying to improve your strength and your endurance and your cardiovascular health, if you're doing anything besides trying to increase your flexibility, then you want to do it so that your musculoskeletal system is protected during the event. And when you think about styles of exercise, it could be running. And running is terrific exercise. But you'll notice that when people run a lot in their 20s and 30s, they're done running at 37. Because you get so many steps before that pounding wears out the discs or their knees or their hips. If they lift heavy weights against gravity, resisted exercise, darn good for you. But if you do it long enough, your discs are going to give you trouble, your joints are going to wear out. So we need to control two mechanical forces so that your skeletal system can hang on long enough for you to have quality throughout your life, and the exercise will be sustainable. And oftentimes people say, but it doesn't hurt when I do these deadlifts. And we'll say, it doesn't hurt yet. And if you think about a smoker, the 14-year-old doesn't look bad the first time they have a cigarette, but you can tell a smoker when they're 30, and certainly when they're 60. So sometimes you want to say, where was this path going to lead you? And if we understand, if we can control the compressive forces that your skeletal system is subjected to, and anything that would take the joints or the tissues to their end range, then it will be sustainable over a lifetime. And it's the way that we train, it's the way that we trained our young athletes, it's the way we trained our kids, it's the way that we train 90-year-olds, is that we've had terrific success in protecting worn out parts or preventing parts from wearing out over a lifetime by controlling axial loading, compressive forces, and position forces as people exercise. When you think about controlling the position force, there's a slackened position for the body. It's called a loose pack position, and it would be if someone was floating in a pool or an astronaut in space. So you'll notice that we have people do a lot of exercises where they're kind of starting in this position. Whether it's this initial weight exercise we're going to do in a minute, whether it's working the weight equipment, whether it's working the weight equipment, whether it's being on a gym ball, whether it's being on a balance board, you're going to notice that we have a tendency to slacken the structure of the body while we are challenging the person's mental and physical toughness, and then it becomes sustainable over time. When you think about controlling the vertical loading, it's not that we never ask people not to lift things against gravity, but we do it with thought. And we do a lot of exercise where people are non-weight bearing or reclined, or when the resistance is applied, it is a decompressive force. It would be lengthening the tissues in the body instead of compressing the tissues of the body. And then it seems like things work out pretty well. When you think about people saying, just start a walking program, then you want to say, well, is the walking program my best choice to keep my tissues and my systems below that threshold where they will be over-challenged? So you want to look at your whole day. If you have limited standing tolerance, then for you to get your main cardiovascular exercise by walking, you are spending that weight-bearing tolerance during the exercise, so you don't have it for going to the grocery store, for cooking a meal, you with me? So you want to be clever about how you size it up. We have a standing job. So for us to be runners is not a great fit because it's more of the same stress. But we could be cyclists. We could be swimmers. It's not that running is bad. I still run 1 day a week. I'm preserving my ability to do it. But if I ran consistently, I could tell that my back and my joints would lose tolerance for other things. So I choose to get my cardiovascular exercise mainly by things that don't add more compression. If you worked in a grocery store, if you're a nurse in a hospital, if you stood for a living, then you want to choose things that might be pulling you apart. But if you had a desk job, if you sit all the time, if you watch TV, if you drive your car, then walking could be terrific because it's going to be different than what your skeletal system is subjected to most of the time. If you think about the walking program, even if you're deconditioned, and you could walk with a walker, then every time you do, you're taking weight off of your structure. There's compression that goes through your wrists and I get it, but you are de-weighting your spine, you're de-weighting your knee, you're de-weighting your hip as you are going, so that without them, maybe you can only walk half a mile and your joints say, bad idea. But if you had something where you were mitigating the compressive forces, then you might be able to go 1.5 miles. So you'll think about even these walking sticks. They don't look like much, but we are just shocked how often people say, if I use the walking sticks, then I can go longer and my skeletal system will be okay with it. And if you watch someone walk without the sticks, especially if they don't have good strength, there's a big sway, there's a big shift that occurs. And when you watch people with the sticks, then that shift is much less. When you think about trying to wash your feet in the shower, if you can just put your elbow against the wall, it gives you so much more stability. So to have just one more point on the ground, even though it's not huge, can be something. So you want to think about preserving the wear and tear on your skeletal system so that you can train throughout life. It has been said that what your cardiovascular system needs to be healthy is 30 to 40 minutes cardiovascular exercise 3 to 5 days a week. But people that exercise in excess of that or compete in sports shorten their lifespan. I mean, think about that. That's a heck of a statement. And they say they shorten their lifespan because they injure or wear out the critical weight-bearing joints so they can't sustain the critical cardiovascular exercise in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And so the key is to look down the road and preserve the health of your structure. Not only you're going to have a better quality of life and have less pain, but you're going to be able to stay active late in life. The people that we see that do the best are the ones that were gifted with a good neuromotor system. They moved efficiently, and they stayed active. They gardened, they played a little tennis, they walked with their friends, but they didn't compete in sports, and they didn't sustain the knee injury. They didn't lift heavy weights. They didn't do heavy labor and blow the disc out in their back. So they still had the structure to sustain the critical exercise late in life. But if you train the way that we want you to train, then you will be preserving your structure and really enhancing your structure so you can train late in life. If you think about the way we're going to start today, we're going to start what we call the initial 8 exercises. And Kelly or Bridget, you want to be the... So if you think about, Kate, you might want to see if the camera will... So you think about the initial 8 exercises. Kelly's going to lay on her back with her knees bent. And we're going to try to choose the right amount of pillow support for her head and neck. So again, the goal is to keep it so that there are slack in her joints, similar to if she was floating in a pool or an astronaut in space, and we have her non-weight bearing. And then there's just a series of exercises that will get every major muscle group in your body to kick in. The beauty of it is we have protected her skeletal system, including the discs in her back and her neck, and she'll have 100% control over the dose of the exercise, how hard she contracts her muscles, how long she holds the contraction, how long she rests in between, how many repetitions she performs. So we have people start with these initial 8 exercises. If they are pretty deconditioned, they've been on bed rest, they had COVID, they had something bad where they really lost a lot of fitness. We have them do it if they have very bad joints, bad discs, bad hips, bad knees. We have them do it if they have become fearful because they have 100% control. So that they will say, look, I think I can do something. And if they're fearful, we'll say, think about how hard you could do the exercise and only do 25% of it. Think about how many repetitions you could do and be safe, only do 25% of it. And then once they have a positive experience and they become familiar, the fear drops, or their muscles start to toughen, their tendons start to toughen, their pain decreases because they're moving fluid and they're decompressing their discs, and a lot of magic things happen. So the way that would go is this, is if we put a ball on her belly, and this ball might even be a little bit tall for Kelly, and she's going to hold her hands like this. So you'll notice that neck is in a good position, like she's floating in space. Knees are in a good position. And then the first exercise, she's just going to compress the ball between her hands and her thighs. Her feet will stay on the ground. And it looks like nothing. But she's getting a contraction of her pecs, of her lats, of her triceps, of her stomach muscles, of her back muscles, and her back is getting a little decompression. And many people have back pain think, oh my gosh, this is just a nice thing to do, because the muscles that can support the back kick in, and there's this decompressive force, so we're moving fluids. And so again, the basic instructions, if she's not fearful, is elicit the contraction, hold it about 5 seconds, fully relax in between. But you can vary that. And she will choose how hard she's pushing. Obviously, the larger contraction that she produces, the more her muscles are going to engage, and the more benefit per stroke. Okay? So that'd be exercise number 1. Exercise number 2, she's going to hold the ball at the equator. She's going to hold it off of her chest just a little bit, and then she's going to squeeze the ball like it's her husband's head. Maybe not that hard. And then if she squeezes the ball, she's even going to try to get her fingers involved. So her wrists and finger flexors, her shoulder adductors kick in, a little kick in of her stomach muscles. She's going to hold it, and then she's going to let it relax. So again, everything's in this kind position. Isometric, she can choose the dose. If it was uncomfortable for her shoulder, she could vary the position and find a position that was acceptable, or a magnitude of contraction that was acceptable, so there's no issue. Okay? So next is going to be, she's going to take a belt and hold it here, and then she's going to squeeze the belt and try to stretch it. And as she stretches it, she will think about pinching her shoulder blades together, so she'll engage those muscles in the back of her neck between her shoulder blades, shoulder external rotators. You can see that she's got a little shake going. So again, it doesn't, when you can choose the dose, it's easy to find a point where your neuromotor system is challenged. And again, if it didn't feel comfortable, she could alter the position. Then she's going to put a bolster between her knees. She's going to squeeze the bolster, squeeze her buttocks. Hip adductors, internal rotators, pelvic floor, a lot of important muscles kick in. Hold about 5 seconds. Let it relax is the basic instruction, but again, she can play with it. She can put the pedal to the metal, and she can really hold it for a long period of time, or she can barely elicit a contraction and focus on the relaxation phase. If holding tension is her pathology, then she can focus on the relaxation phase and only kick in enough to feel the difference between a muscle contraction and the relaxation. So again, it's a nice way of starting. Everything is protected, and so we can coax it to what is most important for her at this time. If she takes her belt and she lassos her knees, oh, it's too big. And once she finds the right distance for the belt, if you can bring your feet a little closer together. Yeah, it's too close. So if she can get it so her knees are like a funnel, then the belt won't have a tendency to slide off of her knees. But if she pushes out against the belt as if she's going to arc her knees to the floor, then she'll feel hip abductors, external rotators, certain muscles in her pelvic floor kicking in, certain muscles in her low back kicking in. Again, it's a way of eliciting some action in muscles without much movement. Okay? She can put the bolster underneath one knee. She'll keep the other knee bent. When this angle, the thigh dorsal angle, is about 130 degrees, there's the least amount of pressure on most people's low backs and hips and nerves. So you like to kind of preserve that angle when you can. So she'll straighten her knee, tighten her thigh, and squeeze her buttocks. So as she does, thigh, hip muscles, Okay, I'd have her hold it a little bit longer. So as she's doing it, she should really kind of bathe in the experience, clear up that map of her physical body on her brain. Try to enter that positive cascade from as many ways as possible. So not only eliciting action in the muscles, demanding circulation in the area, freeing up the ground substances, maybe sticking connective tissue together, but trying to calm her nervous system and bathing in the experience so that her body sense improves. So when we increase the exercises, all the foundation will be present. Then, if she has a problem with her sciatic nerve, so that we need to be careful of a straight leg raise, then this is the way she'll perform the last laying down exercise. She's going to get it so that her feet have enough friction on the floor that when she tries to drag her heels towards her bottom, there's no movement. Okay? And so then she's going to elicit a contraction of her hamstrings and her calf muscles. So if you think about it, let me think. We got pushing down, pecs, lats, stomach, back muscles, triceps, squeezing the ball, wrist and finger flexors, biceps, shoulder adductors, stretching the belt, gripping muscles, external rotators of the shoulder, muscles between her shoulder blades, up into her neck, down into her thoracic cage. She's got squeezing the bolster, hip adductors, pelvic floor, trunk muscles, belt around the thighs, pushing out, hip external rotators, abductors, pelvic floor, back muscles, the short arc quad where the bolster's underneath her knee, quads, glutes, stomach muscles, digging her heels in, calves, hamstrings, her back will get a little bit of decompression. Every major muscle group in your body, if she was smiling at the same time, she's got it all made. Right? She's got it made. But you're going to find that when for muscle to contract well, to really thicken, it needs to be contracted in a shortened position. So if I contracted my forearm here, it could get a certain amount of fat. But if I brought the point together so the muscle was shortened, it could get shorter and fatter. And we need to get your glutes, we need to get your buttocks muscles to kick in that shortened position. So the last one of the initial 8 is that she springs to her feet. And then if she comes to the walker, hopefully they'll be about the right height. So she like it so that it's perfect. The walker is the right height so that when her elbows are straight, her shoulder blades are elevated a little bit. And then she's just going to push down on the walker enough. Push down on the walker enough to stimulate her arms, her pecs, her lats, and her back will get a little decompression. And then she's going to tighten her thighs, but the target here is her buttocks. She's going to squeeze her buttocks like there's no tomorrow. You'll find that when the important muscles you're looking for are hip extensors, external rotators. So if she thinks about grabbing the floor with her toes and pointing her kneecaps apart, it automatically causes your butt muscles to kick in. And so as she does, she gets a large contraction of her glutes, finishing the initial 8. If we thought that we wanted to really round it out, then we'd add one more, so it'd be the nifty 9 instead of the initial 8. So if she lays on her back one more time, and we got some support underneath her legs, and then she closed her eyes and did this breathing exercise to breathe in through her nose, feel the air circulate at the top of the nostrils, breathe in heavy enough that it encouraged her diaphragm to move. If she could do some diaphragmatic breathing, it is magic as far as calming the nervous system. You have 2 parts of your automatic nervous system. You have the fight or flight, and you have the rest and digest. And your breathing pattern can influence which one is triggered. So most of us are biased towards the fight or flight, stress. But if you could do this, if you could breathe in, try to enjoy the air The normal breathing cycle is about a breath every 5 seconds. If you could slow that down by half, so it would be about 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out, it stimulates that rest and digest nervous system. And it could be, when they think about your health, control stress, get sleep, eat well, get exercise. There should be one more, that's get body work. But you think about it, you got to control the stress. If you're not thinking well, nothing is happening. So it could be we should make it the nifty 9. So the way we're doing time-wise, we have time for people to practice. Okay, I think we've got enough. So let's help you guys. If you would like to participate, you're welcome. Thank you. Sure, or you can ask a question now, please. On 1 day a week. And I run on the track, and we do a speed and agility workout so that we are not pounding our joints too long. But when you are thinking about this exercise, we have made it so you're not only negating the negative stress of life on your joints, but you're actually doing something that is decompressing. So you could do this a lot. I mean a lot. So the limiting factor is going to be, really what your tendons can tolerate. But oftentimes, the more you do, the better you feel when you're doing these very protected non-weight bearing exercises. So yeah, thank you so much for asking. We often ask people to stop their day and just do this. You could do the whole routine in 10 minutes, but maybe 3-4 times a day. So you're giving yourself a gift. You're taking a break. You're calming your nervous system. You're nurturing your body. You want to see exercise as a gift, not an obligation. All right. Okay, so let's first have, the people who want to participate, let's have you lay down your back, head on the pillow. If the pillow's not right for you, then we can get